like you guys said, my name's Caylea. My dad was Air Force and my mom was actually Air Force too. I started writing music at a pretty young age. Like my mom says that I wrote my first song on piano when I was 7. I don't remember that, but I do remember when I was 9 or 10, I wrote a song with lyrics and my mom played the piano chords and I sang it in church.
Wow.
Cool.
And then I started like really focusing on songwriting in middle school because I had to quit gymnastics because of an injury, and gymnastics was like my first dream. We got our first iMac computer, which was like so fancy, and it had this little guitar emblem on it, and I was like, what is that? So I open it up and it's GarageBand. And I was like, Mom and Dad, did you know that there's like a music recording thing on here? So like they started actually, I don't remember what the schedule was, but they actually gave me like a couple hours a day by myself on the family computer and told my siblings not to bother me so I could work on learning how to use GarageBand. There was an Air Force songwriting competition for ages 12 to 18, and so I entered that and I won it. And they gave me a check for $2,000. And so I took that $2,000 and I went to my worship pastor at the time, and my parents and him sat with me on, I think it was musiciansfriend.com, and we like went through all the different equipment that I would need to start a home studio. And so he kind of helped me like get all the things that I would need. And so then I was like really spending a lot of time. Like I was spending at least a couple, if not several hours a day after I finished my school. We were homeschooled, so I'd finish my school and work on music. And I started recording and released an EP that I produced it and recorded it and mixed it all on my own at home because I didn't know that you're supposed to like pay somebody who's actually good at mixing to mix it for me. So I released that. That got me into Belmont Songwriting Program, graduated, had several internships through that. And it was through one of those internships that I got connected with Wisdom, which was really cool. Like I married Noah and we moved away from Nashville, and he is in the military as well. So we moved around for his pilot training, and I was like completely isolated from all friends, family, music. That's when I felt like God asked me to give up my dream. And so I was like, that's fine. I don't know why you would put this dream in my heart to have me give it up. But he wasn't saying to give it up. He was just, I think, giving me a mental rest, because right after college, I was really burning myself out already in the first year trying to make things happen all the time. That Wisdom saw me singing and was like, hey, I saw that you teach lessons. Will you teach my kids?
Oh.
So I started teaching his kids. Well, this whole time, he thought that Writing Rounds was a record label that I was signed to. And I was like, no, I am not signed. And then literally the next week, he offered me a contract. Like I met with Lula Street and the team, and he wanted to sign me. And I was like, whoa, like how did that's only God. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I've been releasing music again. My third single comes out next month, which I'm really excited about. It's a super fun one. I always told my parents I don't want to be famous, but I want millions of people to hear my music, and I don't know how you work that out. But I was like, I don't want like people to see my face, and like I don't want to have to be on stage, but I want like as many people as possible to hear my songs, because I just feel like I have something to say to everyone. That dream, I just don't know how that's going to happen, because now I have a family. I've got my 2 very large dogs that are like children. And then there's just the question of like, how do you even like find the right people to help you do that? Because that's not something you can do on your own. And so, yeah, I just feel like I know that I want my artistry to grow in numbers of people that it's reaching, but I feel very stuck with that. And I feel like all I can do right now is just keep making music and keep praying about it and keep trying to get a handle on social media, which I hate with all my heart, but it's fine. We're learning.
What is significant to you about people hearing what you have to say?
I felt called since very young that I wasn't supposed to make Christian music. I felt called to make pop music about deep issues in my life that other people could relate to, whether they were Christian or not. That is what I've always felt called to. And I feel like there's a lot of people who see Christianity in a bad light because they've had a bad experience, and their view of it is skewed by the world and skewed by the fact that a lot of Christians, including myself, we mess up all the time. And I want to show people, like, it's not that it makes you perfect, but it helps you get through all this crap that you're going to go through in life. Like, and being a Christian doesn't mean that you're not going to go through that. I guess I just want people to not feel alone through what they're going through, but also to know that there is hope in God and you're not going to find it anywhere else.
It's something that we navigate as well, that we are on one hand Christian life coaches. Mm-hmm. However, all of our training is secular. So I kind of love that for you. And funny how often it's been echoed in some of the artists that we've connected with.
Yeah.
We've been hearing that same message, actually.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. Well, see, that's God, I feel like, confirming what you guys are doing then.
Yeah.
Too, I would say, yeah.
You kind of alluded to sort of a larger picture, but just to give us clarity, is the sticking point sort of on one hand, I want hundreds of thousands of people in the crowd because I have a message that I want them to reach. And on the other, I don't want to be the person who's trying to be in front of hundreds of thousands of people.
Yep. Yeah. I actually used to be totally good with just being the writer, but I also kind of found my voice around age 20-ish. And so it'd be really cool if I could maybe like write songs for people with that size of crowd to sing. But I feel like I do feel connected to people when I do get to sing what I'm writing. And I didn't have the confidence to do that before I had a particular vocal coach in Nashville named Janine LeClaire. And I had a mentor named Mark Maxwell, who's one of my professors. And he just said, like, Caylea, if you want to be the person to sing these songs, and you keep getting nervous and getting sick before your shows, like, you're putting all the focus on you. And the focus should be on the song getting to the people, because God has a message for the people you're singing to. You are just the vessel it's moving through. So let that take some pressure off of you. It's a weird mix of like, yes, I want to be the person to be the vessel, but also I am introverted energetically. And I don't like big crowds of people. So I don't know how that works.
Just as some, a little encouragement for you, I think introverted is a value. I think it's actually a benefit to what you're going after, because then you can kind of trust yourself to not go down whatever mind chatter you might have about people who try to build an audience of hundreds of thousands and how they're like, self-centered or, whatever. You can trust you don't have that, because this is something you're willing to pursue, even though you don't really naturally want it.
Yeah. And it's funny that you point that out, because like, I'm thinking now all the artists that I really look up to, I feel like kind of fit that persona. Like Tori Kelly is one of my favorite artists ever. And it's funny, she's the center of attention on the stage, but she doesn't like own that, like, I'm the center of attention. She's just sharing her heart.
If you just play into that and see it as more of a strength rather than a weakness, what does that give you permission to do?
That's a really hard question.
That's what she does.
You ask the hard questions. Oh my gosh. What does that give me permission to do? Care less about what they think of me, but more about what they feel from the song and what their heart hears from the song. And it makes me feel like I don't have to, like, if I just owned that, I don't have to try to pretend to be a bubbly person when I'm on the stage. Like, maybe treat a large group as that one-on-one, because I'm totally good with one-on-one.
And if you imagine living out that permission, like really being that person where you're not focused on the crowds and you're more just feeling more personalized, like you're in a coffee shop one-on-one with someone, just sharing your heart, what kind of experience does that give you that's different?
Probably a lot more confidence, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would actually make me feel less vulnerable while being able to be more vulnerable. Like share more openly without feeling exposed, if that makes sense. There's so much that I feel like I actually just wrote a song like a couple months ago, and I don't know if I'm going to really release it yet, but it's called Uncomfortable, and it's about how it's so weird. Like we're sitting next to people all the time, and you have a conversation with someone on the plane, because I wrote it on the plane, and you'll like have a conversation. It's all like meaningless babble, and you're like, and I just want to know, like, okay, this person next to me on the plane has a life. They probably have a family. They probably have like crap they're going through, and I'm interested in that. And like, who is this person I'm sitting next to on the plane? If we're gonna talk at all. If not, I don't want to talk to you. I'd rather just put my headphones on. But if we're going to talk, can we like talk? Can I see a snippet of your life, and can I share mine with you? And maybe we'll like encourage each other on the way, instead of just saying like stuff that, yeah, weather or sports or social media. You see this happening, or I don't know. It's just like stuff we just kind of repeat to each other as a way to make conversation. And I actually grew up a lot in Germany from age 12 to 16. And something culturally that I resonated with over there is like, and I had a hard time coming back to the States, because you, like in the States, you say, hey, how are you? Good, how are you? And then you just like keep going. And you don't do that over there. And people are like, Germans are not friendly. And it's like, no, they're not friendly, but you don't stop and say, hey, how are you? Unless you're going to stop and have a conversation for like 5-10 minutes. Or you just don't say anything. You just keep going. You might wave or say good day, like Guten Tag, but you're not going to be like, hey, how are you? And then just expect them to say good and keep walking. Like, that's so fake. And so, and a lot of people don't see it as fake. They just see it as like, that's hospitable, that's friendly. And I don't think it's like necessarily a right or wrong, but it's just,
it resonated with you.
Yeah, that's where that song came from that I wrote, and that's kind of how I was feeling about it. And I don't know, I want to be able to have real conversations in my songs with people, and I want them to listen and go, okay, fine, finally, I'm not the only one who's going through, like, I'm not the only one thinking this, and and there's somebody else who thinks this, and okay, what's her answer for it? And then be able to say, well, my answer is Jesus for these things. And yeah, sorry, I kind of went on a tangent there.
Great.
Yeah, no, it is great. Well, what I like about that is kind of full circle, and I'll let Jake summarize it too, but just some points I think were really valuable that just came from pausing to ask, get a different perspective, is that if you give yourself permission to step into what you have maybe labeled as a weakness in what you want to do, your vision, your desire, and see it as a strength and wear it more of like, this is how God made me, and I am going to embrace it, that I prefer to have one-on-one conversations. I'm not big in the, crowds of people. And that allows you to be more vulnerable and confident, and showing up with that more of that confidence and vulnerability. It's like a cycle that ends up feeding just a more empowering cycle rather than disempowering and anxiety. And it was just that shift of what would I give myself permission to do if I saw this differently?
Yeah.
And I'd even put on the biggest impact of it, like Whit's saying, you show up more vulnerable. Even if there are 20,000 people, you show up as if you're having a deep conversation with 2 people or 3 people. And that gives you access to the vulnerability. Well, the result of all that action is that you actually do show people they're not alone. Because if you were to go up on stage and talk about social media, you're never showing them they're not alone.
Yeah.
And having that piece come out there. And so it's really it's cool to see how that all plays out from your feeling of confidence, is what you sort of identified as would give you the ability to, you said, share openly, go into deep conversation, be myself, be vulnerable, sing like I'm in a small room. Those are the things that are going to achieve what you were after, which is letting the song come through you.
And as you guys were just kind of recapping it, it just made me kind of go back, take a step back. Like, the confidence is in God's calling, and therefore in God. Like, it isn't in myself, because if it were up to me, I wouldn't be doing anything that I'm doing, because I would be too fearful of failing at it. And I would just be like, it's better not to go that route. Although most of life, I'm not normally like, hey, let's not even try it because we could fail. I'm not like that, except in the area of the music industry. And I think it's because it's just the scariest thing, but it's also the biggest thing in my heart. And so it's like, I don't know. If I didn't have this thing that I know God put in me, like this drive, and he wasn't feeding that constantly, I wouldn't be doing it. It's okay, because in his sovereignty, if he puts me on any stage, no matter what it is, he put me there, then just the fact that I'm there at whatever particular time, in whatever particular room, with whatever particular people, in a sense, nothing can go wrong. Like, even if it goes wrong, it was probably supposed to to like teach me something. But like, that confidence in, like, he really does order your steps. And so if you're doing everything you can to follow his will and that drive he puts in me, then it will all pan out in his plan, which is obviously better than my plan.
He's more concerned about my heart going through the journey with me than just arriving and getting the result. What that offered me was similar to you, that the results, those plans, those desires are just important to him as they are to you, because he put them there. But his priority is more on you becoming the woman he intended you to become.
He's pleased in the growth process of your heart changing to who he wants it to be, not necessarily in arriving, because whenever you do arrive, there's at least for me, just because my personality, I'm always like, all right, I got here, now what's next? It's like, let's arrive at the next thing. Actually, I'm just kind of thinking about this show that's coming up in July. It's a small festival, but my idea of playing live again was like, hey, let's go find a coffee shop. Let's play for 20 people at a time, and let's start there. But I'm starting out at this little festival thing, and even though it's a little thing, it's big to me. And I'm like, okay, God, I'm not ready for that. Like, I know I said I wanted to play live, but that's not what I meant. And so I think that's what I need to do, is like not overthink it and do my part, do the work, do the practice aspect, but then let go and not stress over it mentally. And I think there's always going to be stress, just because, like, I mean, part of anxiety, for me at least, like, I know that's a chemical imbalance in your brain, and that's something I'm working on overcoming and healing. But part of it also is the taking thoughts captive to Christ, and like not marinating on negative thoughts. So whenever I have negative thoughts, like, you're going to totally get sick the day of, or you're going to be like so shaky that you can't hold a proper vibrato. This thing happens when people get nervous. I call it goat vibrato. And like, your vibrato just goes like super fast and sounds
I have heard it.
yeah, it's like, it's not a pretty thing most of the time. It's just, what if this happens? What if that happens? And it's like, you can't sit there and think about that, because that does no good. Like, what if it does happen? Like, it's fine.
We end up kind of preaching to our own soul. Like, oh yeah, I already knew this. Oh yeah, I can do this. I have the confidence. I am capable. But when we're left into kind of our own thinking, it can get really small and scary. And then that's where we end up thinking like, oh, maybe I'm just not being called, or, I need to stay in my comfort zone more.
Maybe it'd be better if I just didn't do it. Like, that's a constant thought.
You've mentioned a few times that in different ways, people have said to you to stay in your lane. or to choose a lane.
Yeah.
And you don't have any problem saying no.
Yeah.
What motivates that? How come you feel so confident to stand up and be like, don't tell me what lane to be in?
My mom and dad would just tell you it's both of their stubborn streaks combined into one. When I was learning, I had no idea that there was even a different title for writer and producer and artist and mix engineer. I thought everyone who made music did all of it. Mm-hmm. And so I just did it because I enjoyed every aspect. So I think it's more like, not necessarily don't tell me what to do, kind of a little bit of that attitude behind it, but it's more like, I could not pick one. I literally couldn't. You would be like ripping a little part of my soul out if you told me I had to give up artistry and singing to become a better producer, or give up production to become a better singer and artist and spend more time pursuing that. Like, I just couldn't. And I'm content with God keeping all three of those on a smaller scale if it means I get to do all three. He definitely gave me a gift in all three areas, and I can't not put the work in one of those areas just because somebody tells me I need to pick one. So
what we do is we listen to you tell these stories, and we get an idea of how your mind works and what helps you and what's against you. And you said a couple of times, I'm exposed. That's something that causes anxiety for you. You don't like to be exposed. And when you get caught up in that, that's kind of putting you into the cycle where now my body's going to let me down and I'm going to be exposed. My throat's not going to do what I want it to do and I'm going to be exposed. And that's kind of over on this side. On the other side, we already talked about this like amazing, path that leads towards you showing the people that you're meant to show they're not alone. And there's a fuel for it that seems to be consistent in all these areas. You believe that God has called you to these three things. You are pursuing a calling from God, and it gives you the confidence to not feel under the authority of what man tells you need to limit yourself to. It just puts it in you. And as you're describing, like, yeah, I just didn't even know because God led me this way. I didn't even know that these were the rules that man put on the music industry because God led me this way. When they say I'm going to have to pick one to go big, I'm like, no, God has all of these on my heart. And I it would rip a piece of my soul out to give away what God put on me. And this thought, however it resonates best with you, God called me to this. God opened this door for me. He put me here. Those are some kind of phrases that you've said that skyrocket your confidence.
That is really encouraging. It's funny because Whitney you said something about preaching to our own souls. Because whenever I have these conversations with people, I'm like, yeah, why don't you think this way when you're sitting down on a daily basis having fears? Like,
and just to encourage, because we work with a lot of clients who have type A personalities and they're very performance driven, which is not a bad thing until you start feeling so much pressure where you start believing, what if I'm not good enough? Or maybe this is all as good as it gets.
That's a big one.
What ends up happening is their high performance that ended up helping them along the way it's now a ceiling that's keeping them stuck. And it's not you, it's the pressure to perform that's actually too heavy to keep going. And so what we like to show you that's available is kind of the conversation that we've already been having with you, Caylea, is where your power lies. And your power lies not in your performance, not in the number of people that are in the audience, which is kind of already what you're realizing, but it's more of, am I answering God's calling today? Because your eyes have shifted from things that are out of your control that feel like the pressure. And now your eyes are focused more on the enjoyment, the joy that you get, the desire, the gifts, your own strengths.
Yeah. Yeah, the joy part, that's super important. That's something my mom pretty consistently reminds me of. She is like actually the biggest example of someone having true joy in the midst of horrible circumstances that I personally know. God is most pleased in you when you're doing what he's called you to do. And if you're a creative person, that's when you're creating. Even when you just do that. And Noah reminds me of this too. Like, even if you're just writing a song that never sees the light of day, which happens all the time, that in itself is just like me and God having time together in what I'm doing because he made me to do that thing.
The temptation that we get into is that you see yourself kind of over planning and trying to get results in order to please God rather than process. And you kind of notice yourself doing that, and you try to force yourself over to like, no, I want to take time and create. I want to, and then we're like stuck back and forth, and it's like actually more anxiety producing to try and do it like that. The key to the whole thing, like you said, is taking your thoughts captive. that this thought, like, oh, I don't want to be exposed, that's what's kind of leading into this place that where you don't want to be. And so there's these beliefs that have just been coming out of you. The one I wrote from this was that I can trust my joy. And I really think that's something that you can like repeat to yourself. Your joy is trustworthy. Your joy's from him. Mm-hmm. He said this to you so that you could have his joy and that your joy may be complete. But like, it is like, you can trust your joy. It is okay. It's safe to trust and pursue it. If you love it, go after it.
Well, it's funny you said trust your joy. I've literally never thought of that before, because joy isn't the same as just like what makes me feel good and what makes me happy. Joy is very deep. It's like extremely deep. And so when you say trust that, well, you only get true joy from doing what pleases God. So like when you trust that and you're doing more of that, like that's gonna make you more joyful, more at peace, which is the opposite of anxiety and worry and feeling not good enough. So thank you for sharing that. That's like very helpful, actually.
It's also finding, for 10 days, I've really been trying to take the steering wheel and over planning. And God's big enough to handle all that too. You know, like there's really, like you're saying, no way you can do it wrong.
Like you don't have to beat yourself up over it when it happens. Because that is 100% what happens. Like you said, it's a vicious cycle where I'm just like, crap, I did it again. Oh, I'm not where I should be. Okay, wait, that doesn't matter. Why are you even beating yourself about that? And then you're beating yourself up about
beating yourself up. Exactly.
Yeah, like it's a constant, just like you said, a cycle back and forth, and it's like ping pong ball. Like it doesn't do anything. Like it just is gonna keep going back and forth.
And you have a skill. You're very self-aware, and that is a skill that is so valuable when we're looking at taking our thoughts captive and intentionally telling our brain what to think. The thoughts that you have shared, that Jake kind of jotted down and summarized for you, those are thoughts that keep you out of anxiety and pressure. And they're thoughts that move you into feeling empowered and confident and joyful. That is the only difference between where you are and where you want to be, is how much you spend in this space, anxiety, pressure, fear, versus feeling empowered and confident and full of joy. Then you're going to be writing, you're going to be saying yes to opportunities.
I believe that your authority is in the phrase, wherever I am, he put me here. And that anytime you notice that you're in the anxiety, rather than trying to tackle the negative thoughts, or like, I would just stop and redirect. And I would just be like, wherever I am, he put me here.
Yeah, it's like, what's that game? Pinball? You know the little things that do this?
Yeah, right.
It's like releasing the pinball, like, okay, let's go this way now. I don't know. I just thought of a lever, like shifting, like over here now. Okay. So yeah, it's helpful to not only just talk out loud with you guys, but to just hear you. Some of the things you've said have just been kind of confirming. I've always had trouble hearing God's voice, like audibly, and knowing, okay, this is for sure God telling me this.
Yeah.
So just hearing some of the things you guys said, it's like, even with this show coming up in July, it's just like, oh, okay, like you can do this. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel kind of relieved after talking to you.
Good. It's been such a joy to meet you and to hear about your story and just how you got to where you are. It's one of the things that we love about what we get to do. There's so much relatability in what you shared, just in our own journey as Christians who are, wanting to help people and reach non-believers and believers. And so much of what you already shared is speaking to our heart too. So just to encourage you to keep sharing your authentic heart, because it's encouraging, it's affirming for us too. It sounds like you have a lot to share.
Thank you guys. I appreciate that.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Ask Steadfast. Whit and I are super excited to use this avenue to sort of spread our message. And so it'd mean a ton to us if you'd subscribe to this channel. Additionally, if you have any questions you'd like to see addressed in future episodes, whether serious or funny, we'd love to see those in the comments. So leave that in the comment below, and we'll see you in the next one.